Welcome to the Stories with Traction podcast. I'm your host, Matt Zaun. Thank you for joining us as we uncover how stories are one of the most important aspects of your business. We'll talk about struggles, victories, and how you can utilize strategic storytelling to inspire those around you to action. Enjoy this episode. 20 years ago, people said, if you don't have a website, you don't have a business. 10 years ago, people said, if you're not on social media, you don't have a business. I firmly believe, because I've seen the importance time and time again, if your organization is not focused on corporate social responsibility, you will have intense struggles in the marketplace. That's the highlight of the conversation today. We're going to dive into what is corporate social responsibility, CSR? What is it all about? What are all the differences regarding CSR? And I'm excited because today I'm joined by someone I view as an absolute genius in the space of CSR, Dan Koval, the Corporate Initiatives Manager at Bentley Systems. To find out more on Dan's background, check out the very first episode of the Stories with Traction podcast, where Dan and I dive into his background, different things that he's done with CSR. And there was such a response from that episode. I got so many questions, so many messages asking for more. So Dan has agreed to come back and really dive deeper into the what regarding CSR. So without further ado, thank you, Dan, for being here. Welcome back to the Stories with Traction podcast.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate being back here. Gosh, it feels like it was almost a whole lifetime ago, the last time we got together on a podcast. So I'm excited to be back. Thank you.
Definitely. It was like a year ago since we had that first one, which was awesome. So there's been so much progress and change and different stories that have been shared and heard. And I very much appreciate everything that you expressed during that episode. And that episode, the response was more than I could have ever thought possible. I mean, there was so many people that listened to it, had questions. I was getting messages where people were intrigued regarding CSR, corporate social responsibility, what it's about. They had different ideas on, oh, maybe I can incorporate this, maybe I can do that. But there was such an outpouring of, where do we go next? What do we do? I understand how this is good in theory, but in practicality, what does this look like? So I thought, and you obviously had agreed that this is something to really explore more. There's a lot of questions in the marketplace. People understand the value. They understand that there's going to continue to be a value. It's only going to get more and more important as time goes on. So why don't we do a deep dive and really unpack a lot of these different things? So all the different experiences that you've had. And again, I really think the first episode, Time, Talent, Treasure, which is the title of that episode. So Time, Talent, Treasure with Dan Koval. People check it out. You share so many different things regarding CSR. Let's dive deeper regarding the what, because I think that there's some confusion, especially in the business space, regarding even what CSR even is or what it isn't. So I want you to talk about that. When someone says corporate social responsibility, what is the picture that comes up in your mind?
Great question. Yeah, I think for everyone, every business, it's going to be a little bit different. But to me, the general understanding is that as part of the community, now you can define community based upon the size of your business and your industry. I think that the small local pizza shop, for example, right? Community is the soccer team down the street that needs new jerseys or cleats, for example. If you're a large multinational car manufacturer, for example, it's all the places in the world where you get resources and ensuring that those people who live around the area of your plants have reasonable and holistic lives. And then I think for everyone in between, right? I mean, granted, car manufacturers probably aren't the biggest thing in the world today, at least not in terms of making money. But I think in terms of people understanding the impact that business has is that corporate social responsibility is the opportunity for businesses to make the communities that they're in stronger.
All right, so this is a very good and also interesting point, because a lot of times in the business world, when people think about community, they're thinking of their ideal clients. They're thinking of their personas, the people that they are selling to. And we will get into that when we start diving into the why, and why it's absolutely mission critical that companies do start at least thinking about it and then executing. And for those companies that have CSR, there's more that they could be doing from a why perspective as well as a how. So we will dive into that more. But I was fascinated by your definition of community. So basically, it's the community that that entity serves. So based on the example that you gave, you have a local business. Maybe they are a member of a local chamber of commerce. They're very local. They're in a town, and the community is the town. Maybe there's a business where there's a couple locations. So now the community is the county. It's the county that they're doing business. You also had mentioned large corporations. So maybe their community that they serve is more global. Maybe they're not only in the United States, but they are in Asia and they're in Europe. So now the community that they are representing is a global community. So I think that's a very important distinction, is for people to ask themselves, what is the community that I'm in? Not necessarily the clients that I'm serving, and that is important. And again, we will get to that, but what is my community? So once an entity defines community, where do they go from there? What do they do next?
So I think once you're able to find where you are, right, just like you said, whether you're multinational, you're hyper local, you're somewhere in between, you want to start thinking about who or what you want to be in the community around you. So for example, if you have a manufacturing plant or a large warehouse or a large building, you're probably going to take the time to put a really nice sign outside and have lights on it at night and make sure that the windows are clean and things like that, right? Businesses love to make themselves look shiny, but it's one thing to appear a way, but it's another thing to see how the community views you and the impact that you have. For example, are the parking lots around your business, are they clean? Are they tidy? Are they accessible? Are the streets or the bus stops in front of your place of business where your customers and your employees travel to and from, are they well maintained? I think of it as the old adage of, cleaning your front steps out in front of your house, right? You want your pride of ownership to be such that it's not arrogant, right? You don't want to be the neighbor that tries to pretend like that their grass is always the greenest, but you want to be the neighbor that says, hey, I'm going to make sure my front step is clean, and that should hopefully encourage my neighbors to want to maintain their stuff as well. And so you want to have that appearance or that branding in the neighborhood, in the community, is that when people think of your company, when people drive, walk by, ride public transportation by your building, your office, your facility, your shop, your drive-through coffee shop, whatever it is, that when they see it, their first reaction isn't, ugh, that place. You want them to have a positive feeling or positive thought in their mind to start off with.
All right, so there's a really good point that people should really focus on, is you're talking about, what does someone want to be known for? So we talked about what is their community. Now, what do they want to be known for? So to use the example that you gave regarding a local pizza shop, and then we'll expand out talking more large corporation. But from a local pizza shop perspective, there's actually one that I'm thinking about in my mind, where this person that runs this pizza shop wants to be a place that the community can come to break bread, or in this case, eat their pizza. They're surrounded by fields. So there's tons of fields. There's a lot of football, a lot of soccer, a lot of different activities happening. So after a game, all these athletes go to this pizza shop. Now they're celebrating. So this is what they want to be known for. They want to be known as the place that people go to celebrate their victories when they have an awesome soccer game. So it almost connects this person even deeper with the community on, all right, these athletes you had mentioned, they need jerseys, they need this, they need money for travel, they need all these different things. So they want to be known as a place the community comes to celebrate victory. What's the best thing that they can do regarding the CSR giving back to them is maybe they could do a drive for them. So all the ins and outs of the pizza that they sell on a given night, a percentage of that goes to the jerseys. So just painting a picture for, all right, this is what this entity wants to be known for. How can they take that a step further? Now, if it's not a local pizza shop, but it's a massive corporation, what values do they have? And one of the things I always challenge companies to think about when it comes to values is I always challenge companies, don't focus on the words of your core values. Focus on the core stories that exemplify those core values, because we all think in pictures, right? So if I always bring up the image of a dog, because I just think it's easy for people to conceptualize this. So when I say dog, everyone has a different image of what a dog is in their mind. My dog is a little Morkie, a little Maltese Terrier mix. Someone listening to this, they may be thinking German Shepherd, they may be thinking Golden Retriever. They're all dogs, but they're different pictures. And the danger in companies touting their values from a word perspective is the picture that the leader of the organization has of that specific value is not the picture that one of their team members has. It's not the picture that their clients have. This is why it's so important for them to share a lot of stories when it comes to these values. CSR can tie into the values of the organization. So back to your point on what do they want to be known for? Well, if they truly believe that they are the best at X, Y, and Z, how are they proving it to the community that they serve? So I want you to go into that a little bit and talk about that on some of the values, but not just in the words, but the action, the behavior, the stories of these values. What has come up with different things that you've seen where the company says, okay, this is what we want to be known for. This is how CSR is going to fill that void.
Yeah, and real quick before I answer your question, I'm gonna circle back to the local pizza shop analogy, because yes, they want to be tied into the community, and they want the story that the people attending the games to partake in is going out from what's easy, right? I myself have taken my sons to various sporting events, and afterwards, what do? You leave the field, you get in your car, you pile everyone in, you fight through the traffic, and you go to leave. And whether you won or you lost, or is it Friday or is it Tuesday, you just want to go. And what's easy? For me, staying in my car, maybe going home. Hopefully there's food in the refrigerator. But in reality, the easiest thing is staying in my car. And so am I going to stay in my car? Am I going to go through a drive-through at some chain fast food restaurant? Maybe, because that's what I really like. Or am I going to be so in love with the story of this local pizza place that I'm like, I'm going to intentionally park my car, get out of my car, go into their place and stand in line so that I can partake in their business because of the way they make me feel about their partnership with the community, right? Whether it's I see their banners, I see their logo on the back of the jerseys, those sorts of things. It's the story, just like you were saying, Matt, that these businesses get to tell through their marketing and advertising. And so I think that kind of ties into the next step of the question, in that a larger corporation, whether it's just single country or multinational or fully global, whatever it is being able to tell the story that makes the most sense. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one correlation. I might be getting a little ahead of our plans in the agenda here, but in terms of, we'll go back to the car manufacturer analogy. There is nothing wrong with supporting breast cancer research or some other sort of medical research, right? Those are phenomenal. We've made phenomenal advances in the medical industry in the past handful of years, and I'm very, very thankful for the doctors and the scientists and everyone doing those things. However, if you were in the car manufacturing business and you weren't focused on the environment or sustainable processes and things like that, you'd be almost crazy to then tout your involvement in the medical industry. Again, you can do both, absolutely. But I think in terms of what's the story, what do you want people to know and to think about and feel when they hear your name, is they want things that make sense to them, right? Our brains are fairly logical, I think. I think that's how we were designed. We're to be logical human beings. And so when I hear about a car manufacturer, and if you were to hear, oh, the rubber that they're using to make the tires from the rubber trees, they've decimated thousands and thousands of acres of land, and now it's just a wasteland. Like, well, that sounds bizarre. That sounds weird. Or if the story they told was, for every rubber tree plant that we used to harvest, right? You got to be mindful with your words that matter, and tell the story that says, oh, for every one tree that we harvest, we plant 2 more, because we want to ensure not just the longevity of our business, but also the longevity of the environment of where we're sourcing these natural resources, right? That tells me you're doing more for the future, and you're a future thinking organization, as opposed to just here, buy these things because we make them cheap and efficient.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack with what you said. So I want to back up, and I also want to use the car dealership analogy as well, because I think it's really important for us to unpack that. So to back up to the pizza shop, you talked about you going to this pizza shop. They already know their community, what they want to be known for. And I immediately thought back to stories with me and my father. So I wrestled for a decade, and I also played football for about 4 years. And regardless if there was a victory or there was a loss, there was a debriefing where basically my father would take me to a restaurant. We normally did this over food, because who doesn't love an enjoyable meal? And if there was a victory, my dad and I would replay that in our minds at a specific restaurant. So we're replaying what went well. And if there was a loss, my father, being the great man that he was, would talk to me about lessons on leadership and really what a loss means in the here and now, and then obviously in the future. And it was gorged with lessons that were very invaluable to me from a very early age regarding work ethic and leadership and strategy. But that was done at a local restaurant. So that local restaurant wants to be known for people coming in regarding the community. So that really speaks to everything that you had said regarding, it's not just we're selling pizzas, we're also offering A, B, and C. Then to dive into what you said regarding the values, and this is what I want people to really latch on to, is 9 times out of 10, I see zero strategy when it comes to CSR with companies. Zero. Absolutely zero. There's such a crazy missed opportunity. It's mind-boggling to me. So you had mentioned, breast cancer awareness. Awesome initiative. Unfortunately, I know way too many people that were taken way too soon regarding cancer. It's something we 100% need to focus on. And Dan, you've seen in your many, many years of experience with this, there's tons of organizations pumping a lot of dollars into helping with cancer research, awareness, the whole 9 yards. And that's awesome. And you've done a lot of work in that field as well. So we're not downplaying that. It's absolutely neat. There's way too many lives that are taken off this planet due to all kinds of cancers. There's so many companies that have zero strategy in what they're doing regarding CSR that it doesn't even come close to tying into even in the ballpark of what they want to be known for. And that's why we started off with the pizza analogy, because it's a simple analogy. So now we're going a little bit deeper. The car one that you had mentioned, I want people to think about this on a much deeper level on, okay, we're selling cars, but what do we truly want to be known for? One of the biggest causes of death in the United States of America is car accidents. So if you're a car dealership and your goal is to truly help people go from point A to point B, well, what gets in the way of going from point A to point B is death, because there's hundreds of thousands of car accidents, fatal car accidents that take place in the United States. There's tons of nonprofits that do a lot of good things regarding safety, regarding engineering, regarding, what's the problem regarding that death? Is it drunk drivers? Well, if that's the problem, then there's a lot of different nonprofits that can help with that. So it's unpacking and going deeper with what you said, and I don't want it to get lost. That's why I want to dive deeper with it. Is you had said, what do you want to be known for? That question could take an organization quite some time to answer. It might not just be a simple thing on, oh, we want to be known for selling cars so people can get to work. Well, what's it on a deeper level? What do you truly want to be known for? Then once you can identify that, what are the creative ways that you can reach out regarding different things that you're talking about, Dan, to actually show the community, back to what you said, what's your community? Show the community that you serve, this is truly what we're doing, because this is what we firmly believe. So I want you to talk about that a little bit more, about this car. I love this analogy. So you have a car dealership. Obviously, they want people to safely get from point A to point B. What's the strategy that they can be utilizing? They've already identified what they want to be known for. How do they go deeper and tie that into CSR?
Yeah, so just like you said, there is a plethora, I love that word, a plethora of nonprofits in every area that do everything imaginable under the sun to be able to make people's lives better. At least in the US. I guess I can't speak for everywhere in the world, but I do believe that there is plenty of nonprofits, non-government organizations all around the globe that help us to do things to make lives better. And so once you identify what it is you want to be known for, right? Do you want to be known for, it's one thing to be known for having a car itself that is safe, which is, yes, please, sign me up for safe vehicles themselves, right? I want one that has seatbelts, that has the 45 airbags, it has a bazillion sensors on it. Like, that's awesome. I appreciate that. However, what are you doing to make other people safer? If we're going to follow down this rabbit trail here in terms of cars and safety and stuff like that, I would say, right, you had talked about the anti-drunk driving organizations. You have organizations about educating folks on how to drive, safe driving tips, getting into schools, right? Specifically, I think it's secondary education. Is that high school? High school levels where students are starting to take driver's ed, or at least they used to. I'm not sure that's still actually a thing today in 2022, but there's plenty of areas where you can position yourself to partner with organizations, right? Because for-profits don't need to create these opportunities. They exist. For every single for-profit that's out there that's making the newest, fanciest widgets, there are 3 nonprofits that are solving problems and situations out in the communities. I kid you not. And so it takes a little bit of work sometimes, takes a little bit of effort to go out and find those organizations you want to partner with. And then, just like you said, Matt, in terms of not having a strategy and not being able to know how to tie everything together, if one of your values is safety, you find those organizations that are promoting safety in the wheelhouse, in your area of expertise, in addition to in your community. Not like, hey, we're going to fund driver's ed in Antarctica because there's only probably a half a dozen people there to begin with, let alone no teenagers probably live in Antarctica, right? But finding ways to provide those connecting relationships between your organization, your for-profit organization, and the nonprofits that exist out in the world.
So you mentioned Antarctica, and it almost sounds funny. It is funny. But I want people to think about this because that example that you gave, obviously for a humorous effect, the ridiculousness of it, I feel like most companies, the way they run their CSR is so utterly ridiculous, it's almost laughable. Like it's actually, they're doing themselves and the community a disservice because there's no strategy whatsoever tied behind it. They're actually wasting time where they could be doing something that truly benefits the community, truly ties into their what and why, but they're not doing that. So I want to dive deeper into the concept of what, just so that people understand the different avenues that are out there. So we talked about CSR. I think now my picture now, based on talking to you, Dan, is really focused more on strategy. Like good CSR is really tied to strategy. But let's talk about other things too. So there's giving, there's ESG, and there's foundation. I want you to talk a little bit about the differences. So what would be the difference between CSR and just straight up giving? Let's talk about that difference first.
Sure. So, I mean, giving slash philanthropy, depending on how you want to categorize it, it is what it is. It's very straightforward. We give money wherever we want. So we, the corporation, I'm speaking on behalf of the corporation now, would just give money to wherever they wanted, whether it is someone's pet project, right? There's an executive that likes something and they want to just fund it. Or you have opportunities where employees get to have a say in something. And so whether it's the car company supporting the Cancer Society or something along those lines, it's just, we have money to give, we have a line item, and we're just going to give it away. Sometimes it is of a more heartfelt nature because it is a little more personal, but it's basically, there's no strategy. It is a throw mud on the wall and see what sticks version of giving. Right, just like you were saying, it's not a sales strategy, but it's a giving strategy. It's a donation strategy, a philanthropy strategy that just whoever asks can have some. And when I run out of that money in that bucket, then it's all gone.
All right, so let's go back to the pizza shop analogy just for simplistic sake. It's the simplest example. So based on what I'm hearing you say, the difference between CSR and giving in that category would be the individual that owns said pizza shop gives money to a local sports team. Awesome. Local sports teams need money for various reasons. The CSR strategy difference would be this pizza shop blocks off 2 Fridays a month to have a fundraiser for the girls' soccer team in the local community. This soccer team's doing awesome. So there's pictures of all of the victors on the wall, giving a percentage of this fundraiser, doing all kinds of messaging behind the importance of athletics in our community. It lessens crime, it boosts test scores, whatever they're going to be touting. So there's a clear difference between chucking money at something and then also having a strategy and building a partnership. You're really building, you're connecting. This is relational. You're helping. It goes much further than money. There's strategy into it. So would you say, and obviously companies that, multi-billion-dollar companies, the strategy is going to be deeper and there's so many different nuances that you can go into. But all in all, based on the pizza shop analogy, would you say that would be the clear difference between CSR and giving?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would push back a little bit on you in terms of the depth of the strategy only for the larger corporations, because think about what you just did for this pizza shop. Now, this is applicable to any small food or beverage based business that you could do this. And I'm sure there's other ways you could apply, but right. So you're going to advertise, so your name's going to be on a banner somewhere at the field. You do the Friday night special thing. Oh, by the way, on that banner, you say, okay, if the Lady Kickers, whatever the name of the girls' soccer team is, if they win, every player gets $1 off a slice. Or, I mean, I think there's so many opportunities where, just like you said, you continue to build that connection because you have a strategy. It's awesome. that these local businesses support local athletics the way that they do. I think it's foundational to the community in general. However, just that's the difference between giving and CSR is the lack of strategy, because there's so many more opportunities for that local business owner to be able to so deeply ingrain themselves, not just in the community, but in the lives of the people that are just living life and doing their thing anyway around them. And so having the signs, having the rewards, having those continual fundraiser events, right? You're building habits that consumers will just, not just drive through or drive home and, reheat some cold pasta on a Friday night because you're feeling lazy, but you want people to break out of that norm and break out of the lazy and use your place of business. So yeah, that's the difference. The strategy, the connection, the relationship. I love that.
All right. So we have the giving, and then we have the CSR, which is definitely more focused on the strategy. So what would be the difference between CSR and ESG?
This is a topic I'm probably going to get myself in trouble on, and I'm there. If you could see my hands, I'm making like an asterisk disclaimer. I'm going to do my best to explain the two, but bear with me because there are some nuanced differences that are important to understand. But for all intents and purposes, from what I gather in my more than 5+ years of being in corporate social responsibility, in giving and fund management, would be they're basically the same, except ESG, which is environmental, social, and corporate governance branded giving, that's based on metrics and on actual outcomes. So for example, we'll go back to the pizza place. Pizza place, they sponsor the girls' soccer team. That's giving. They host the Friday night fundraisers to help buy new jerseys and new cleats for the girls. That's CSR. They offer a very specific coupon code because they handed out flyers at the game and you get money off, and they count the number of people that use the coupon code and the return on investment on that form of marketing / giving. That's ESG. ESG is super duper metrics heavy, which can be very good and can be very daunting and can be very interesting depending on what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. It's also very much aligned with investors. There is a sphere of investing. I'm talking about like stock market investing specifically. I'm not a stockbroker. I'm not recommending anything. I'm not a financial advisor by any stretch of imagination, but there is ESG investing. It's those people who want to invest their money with companies who are focused on ESG based initiatives, and they get ratings. There are global companies that are just designed to just track the metrics of this environmental, social, and corporate governance giving that companies do. And so there's a lot more paperwork, in my opinion, that comes along with ESG, and it has its time and its place. Like for depending on what your goals are and what your strategy is, everything has its place. But the main difference, from what I understand and from what I've been able to research and find, is that ESG is more based on metrics and the return on investment of the giving than just a simple strategy.
Okay, so ESG is based more on metrics. So it's CSR with metrics attached. So it may be more legacy. So let's use the example of the pizzas. So let's say this isn't a local pizza shop. Let's say it's a massive pizza conglomerate organization. And I'm a shareholder in this company. And I'm really, really interested in more youth programs around the country getting involved in athletics. We've seen all these studies regarding, communities that have a really beefed up athletic program have less crime, they have more involvement in the community, whatever those are going to be. So me being a shareholder in the company wants to see the metrics of what that CSR does regarding the athletics. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's along those lines, but it's more on. I think it's a little bit more minutia than that. It's not necessarily the metrics of how the community itself is impacted per se, but it's more like return on investment. Again, this is from my understanding. This is the way that I've figured it out, or I've learned about it. There's a lot of articles online about, like, comparing CSR versus ESG. Again, they're very, very similar in my opinion. I'm sure I'll get some pushback on that one. That'd be fun. Uh, but
That's
I think
awesome.
I think that, right, CSR has strategy to it. ESG has a lot more iterative metrics that you will continue to refine and dial in based on either who you're serving, and that could be the general population and public, or who your shareholders are and what their particular interests are. So hopefully that helps.
Understood. No, it's extremely helpful. And I think to listeners that maybe they're just starting to get involved in CSR, maybe they have a CSR program, but we're going to give them a lot more ideas regarding strategy and stories that need to be shared. When we start to heavily talk about the why, I think that clears up some things for people that had no idea about CSG. I think you painted a much better picture for us on what that is. So thank you. So my next question and last question in the what category would be the difference between CSR and foundation. So what is a big difference between starting a foundation and utilizing a robust CSR program?
Head cost. I mean, that's the easiest thing, because a foundation, basically what the company does is it sets up its own nonprofit that's kind of a sister company, for lack of better terminology. So you have Corporation A, and then you have Corporation A's foundation. And so what will happen is, if Corporation A is so successful and doing so well, and they know that they have regular amounts they want to be able to give away or be able to earmark for different organizations, or to be able to put away maybe for down the road, they see something coming down the pike and they're like, hey, we know, I think I saw it on, we know there's going to be wildfires in California this year, right? It's like clockwork, basically. And so they say, hey, we know we want to put some money aside for that. So we're going to not just earmark it and keep it in our bank account, but we're going to move it over to this foundation. That's a 501c3. It's going to be a complete tax write-off, from my understanding. Again, not a tax professional either, but it's the tax write-off portion that you just write one giant check to the foundation, and then the foundation from there will dole out the funds to either other 501c3s. Again, this is in the U.S. Sorry for my U.S. tax code. Or they'll give it to other organizations that they feel need the help or need the assistance. Maybe not necessarily always tax exempt organization, but that's basically the difference. Is in CSR, it's all maintained within the company, within the corporation, within the LLC, whatever it is. It's all self-contained. For example, I myself am an employee of the company that I manage the giving for. So I'm not like the executive director of the foundation of the company, where that is an option. If you do have a foundation, you have an executive director, you have an HR team, you have a marketing team. Like there's a lot more folks involved. That's from my experience and from what I've seen and done, the little research I've done, is that because it is a lot more humans, a lot more resources are needed. It's not always a cost accessible for smaller companies. And so being able to have that almost like third party significance within the foundation, and that's why I think a lot of times it gets set up so that you can kind of set up a whole team to go do stuff over there and execute on that strategy.
Awesome. Thank you for laying that out for us. I think that's extremely helpful to people listening. So we unpacked a lot within this episode. There was a lot that we unpacked. So again, I want to mention the reason why we're doing this and we're highlighting this again is because of the overwhelming response that I received from Dano's conversation. It was actually the first podcast episode, Time, Talent, Treasure. I received so many messages, so many questions about, okay, I understand a little bit about CSR, but dive deeper. And I think we did that. We talked a lot about the what. So just to recap, Dan, you had talked about what is the community that this entity is in. So my challenge to everyone listening that you want to do something regarding CSR is literally sit down and start capturing pen to paper or typing it out. What community are we in? Are we a local town community? Are we in a county? Are we in a specific region? Because there's multiple outlets. Is it national? Is it global? What is the community that we serve? And then Dan, the next what that you gave us was, what do you want to be known for? Not only from we do X, Y, and Z products and service, these are our clients, but what do you want to be known for? What are the values that you have? What's the strategy you can put behind these values with CSR? Then you also went further regarding what's the difference between giving and CSR and ESG and foundation. I think it's really good for people to understand that there's many different ways that you can give, you can have strategy regarding CSR. So I appreciate that. So we went over 3 specific what's, and we started to talk about the creative strategy that organizations can have. So we started to talk about the why behind why an organization would want to do that. And the why is huge. So we do not have time to talk about the why in this episode, but I am unbelievably excited because Dan Koval has agreed to do a series on this because of all the questions. It's absolutely a need. We covered the what for you today. The next episode, we will dive into the why, on why this is important, what you can do regarding the why. There's so many different angles organizations can take. And I think this is one of the biggest missed opportunities right now in business, is people not understanding all the different whys behind CSR. So with that said, I highly encourage everyone to listen to the next episode. However, right now, if people have questions for Dan regarding the what, where's the best way that they can connect with you, Dan, to have some of those questions answered?
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am Dan Koval. And I just looked, there's a bunch. There's 58 Dan Kovals on LinkedIn, and I'm going to have to fix that. I'm going to have to maybe go friend them all or something and connect with them all and figure out a way to make my profile stand out a little bit better. But I'm still Dan Koval out there. I'm sure you can find me because I'm the one making the world a better place.
That's awesome. So there are many Dan Kovals. Today we were joined by the Dan Koval. And the next episode, we will be joined by the Dan Koval again, where we will dive into the just the magnitude of the why behind why you're going to want to do CSR in your organization. So Dan, thank you again for your time. I cannot wait for our next episode.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm excited for it already.
Thank you for listening to the Stories with Traction podcast. If you have a story that you would like to share, feel free to drop an email to matt@mattzaun.com with the subject line Stories with Traction. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, where I share tons of resources on how you can be a better storyteller. Remember, if you want to persuade with power and inspire those around you to action, you must share more stories.